Renée Fleming is in Toronto tonight. She's performing a solo concert with the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, and she has dropped by Studio Q. Now, I understand that you're leaving performing in big full operas behind and now doing more solo concerts like the one you'll be doing tonight. What prompted this decision?
Well, I actually have always done mostly concerts, so this has been going on for 15 years at least. Because opera takes a lot of time, and it sort of grounds you in one place for a month to 6 weeks. And I finally decided I want to keep repeating the same three roles, so I'm going to go on and which I could continue to do that, but I'm not a big repeater. So I get to go on and travel. I mean, I've been all
Nice.
over. I've been in New Zealand and Australia, Morocco, and South America just in the last year.
Beautiful.
Besides my normal touring.
Yeah.
So I'm loving this. It's been really wonderful.
Now, when you're up there singing alone as opposed to within the big company, does it feel any different?
Well, in a piano recital, obviously, it's very different than with orchestra. So in a piano recital, it really is a very intimate kind of performance, and I get to program the whole thing. I have the responsibility of doing that. And a concert with orchestra is obviously a shared concert, and particularly this type of concert, which really celebrates the orchestra and opening night. So, yeah, they're all different, and the variety is the thing that I really love.
Oh, I bet. Just keeps it interesting for
Yeah,
you, so it's still hot.
right.
You have talked a lot about the fact that you have carefully planned your career. Why is it important for you to have that kind of forward thinking and planning in place?
Well, I don't know how careful it's been. I mean, I tend to think of things too late, and even my best efforts inevitably get me working too much, and I've been doing it for a long time now. I mean, one of the things that I love the most now is new music. So I have a world premiere in Rochester across the lake.
Oh,
In November, it's Kevin Putz's settings of George O'Keeffe's letters for me. And it
oh,
is going to be such a beautiful work. I'm really,
wow.
really excited about it. And Eastman, I went to school there. So did he. So we're kind of
Nice.
celebrating our tenure together.
And will that travel once you've done
I
it there?
think, the first performance is in Rochester, or the second performance 2 days later is in Lincoln Center in New York. And then I do think it will get picked up. I think I myself will try and sing it on a regular basis if I can.
Nice. You have referred to yourself personality wise as a goody two shoes, which always kind of made me chuckle whenever I read that. What do you mean by goody two shoes?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny because a colleague of mine, Susan Graham, I was just in Santa Fe with her, and we're singing Rosenkavalier in concert in Boston next week. And I realized that she had a lot of fun when she was a young person, and I just didn't. I was always doing the right
Ah,
thing and working hard and just more serious somehow. And I don't regret it, but I sort of always thought, gosh, I would look up to someone like her and some other friends and just say, why can't I have more fun?
just let loose and
Yeah.
let it
I mean, my
go.
nickname in middle school was Miss Perfect, right?
Oh,
And that was not
yeah.
a compliment, if you know what I'm saying.
But to get to the level that you've gotten, obviously, in defense of that Miss Goody Two Shoes, there had to be a lot of serious work done.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I love it. I mean, I really like doing that.
Yeah.
It gives me tremendous pleasure to sit in a practice room and think about music and art, and try also now in my position at Lyric Opera of Chicago and at the Kennedy Center, really trying to develop the audience and think about the future and how I can contribute.
There's been a lot of talk recently, or maybe I am just recognizing it more as I'm aging. People are talking more about the notion of coming into your own, about the fact that maybe you're not your most perfect when you're 19 and 20, as media tries to convince us. I've read that you listened to or watched a video of yourself singing when you were young and you were like, oh, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the development of your voice and how you think of it now compared to then?
Well, the voice, really doesn't develop for most people, until you're in your 30s. And for me, that was definitely true. And I mean, it may have partly been the way I was singing, but I think the color in the voice really was the end of my 20s that I started to sound where I would hear something and I'd say, yeah, okay, that's my voice. But really young, no, you can't. It's very hard to tell how somebody's going to develop when they're in their early 20s.
Is it the tone or is it the ability to emotionally interpret the music?
I'm just talking about. I'm only talking about the voice itself.
Okay.
Yeah, and the interpretation is another whole thing. And there are some gifted people that I've worked with who came on the scene pretty fully formed. I mean, Bryn Tervel, Cecilia Bartoli. I mean, there are people who at a young age are really there. They're artists.
Right.
I was not one of those.
So when you were doing it in those young years, how did you make the decision to keep going, to not quit when your voice wasn't that yet?
Well, I had, for me, it wasn't the voice. As I got into a place where I was auditioning, which is really more late 20s, then it was just the frustration at not really getting picked up and not getting anywhere. And about the time when I sort of thought, okay, the universe is trying to tell me something. This was not meant to be, is when the doors opened. So I was just lucky that I didn't quit before things happened.
Yeah, I'm thinking for the listener, not everyone can relate to being the greatest at what you do in the world, being referred that way by many people, but everybody can relate to that feeling of, gee, I really think that I've got something, but everybody else is telling me I don't. Can you think back to that time and what the feelings were that you reached out within yourself to grasp that kept you saying, no, something's going to give here. This is my thing.
Resilience is really key. I mean, you're going to have a lot of disappointments. If anything that you're trying to do that's hard, and even rejection, particularly from the arts, and you have to keep getting back on the horse. And and I had the drive to do this, and really, in my case, the drive was to succeed. It wasn't necessarily to be a singer.
Right.
So, I was happy to leave it and go into something else and try to find success there. That was the thing I really needed. On the other hand, the resilience really paid off, And then I would say there's also a point at which, I tell all young artists to think of a couple of paths. It's becoming much more common now that young people are going to try several things before they hit on the thing they love the most, or that loves them in this case. So if you really only focus on one thing, it can be a double challenge.
There are a lot of people who would say, I'll be happy if I can make a living as a singer. Mm-hmm. When you rise to the level that you've risen to, are your expectations constantly going as well? Are you always reaching to that next location out there?
Yeah, I would say I'm the kind of person who's climbing the mountain all the time, and looking for new ones. And, it's innate. It's who I am. And I have colleagues who are happy earning a living. The thing that you trade off with this particular career, particularly in opera or concerts or anything, is that you are traveling all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's a really big sacrifice to make when it comes to your friends and family. So you have to really want to do this and or love this lifestyle.
In order to put all that out there.
I mean, my children are both gifted singers. Neither of them are pursuing the arts at all.
Oh,
other
really?
Than for fun, because they know too much.
They watched it. Were you able to take them with you on the road, or were they kind of stuck at home a lot of the time?
No. That's the one perk I could give them. They've been all over the world with me, and they appreciate it and get that it's a real privilege, and as do I.
Now, Freddie Mercury said it best when he said, "It's been no bed of roses and no pleasure cruise." That climb to the top is not always smooth. Can you talk about Milan back in the 80s? I understand you had a concert there that went not the way you would have liked it to go.
Well, Milan, La Scala opera is, frankly, it's just it's a blood sport there. And if you're used to that, if you play baseball in this country, no matter, your fans will even scream at you if you make a mistake, right?
Right.
So if that's the culture you're in, it's no big deal, and you sort of get used to it. But we weren't in that culture, so a lot of people who would go to Italy and sing and really confront that, it's not a pleasant thing. It's something you have to kind of. On the other hand, you get kind of badge of honor. If you get booed at La Scala, people are like, wow.
So they will actually boo.
Yeah, it's like 5 people, but they're loud. The rest of the audience is screaming at them. But, when it happens, a lot of people never go back.
I'm a comic, and I thought we were the only ones that get booed. I'd never dreamed that in an opera that people would do that. Did that give you any kind of anxiety or stage fright?
That whole year was rough. So I wrote a book. I wrote a chapter about it. It's called The Inner Voice. And for young singers, I highly recommend it because it really goes in depth into the process of singing. And Ann Patchett worked with me on it. She's a dear friend. We premiered her opera in Chicago this year, Bel Canto.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's going to be on TV, I think, in a couple of months. So look for it because it
Yeah.
really was phenomenal. But, I tried to put a lot of these kinds of things in the book to kind of really help young singers and, frankly, any young person trying to do something hard understand what it takes.
And that inner voice, when you talk about it, what do you mean exactly? Are you shutting down the inner voice, or you're hearing it and yet finding a way to deal with it?
Well, the inner voice, as in terms of this process, is about your gut. For instance, even learning how to sing is a tremendous minefield. I mean, it's so mysterious, the voice, because it's produced, largely by involuntary muscles. So how do you make that work, right?
Right.
So it's a lot of, we use imagery, even if we understand perfectly well how the instrument works in the body, it doesn't mean we can do it. So it's a lot about how you have to find your own way and instinctually know what works for you and what doesn't, make choices, let things go, and it's still a tough path.
That experience in Milan in '98, in the comedy world, we say not everybody finds everybody else funny. Maybe it's just not for this crowd.
Right.
Do you say that in your mind when it comes to opera? You say, look, that's just what this place is like, and I'm going to put those 5 people in the back of my mind now and move on. Or is that something that you do a deeper analysis on?
I think you have to be. I think you have to protect yourself in that way from criticism. Frankly, the best advice I got in that respect was from a sports psychologist who worked with tennis players and golf players and people who really are alone in their sport.
Right.
And he said, "You have got to protect yourself. You can't read the reviews. You cannot." You can't absorb the negativity because the better you do, the more people will be there to bring you down. And so basically, I set it up so that I have sort of filters set up in every respect.
Yeah.
When you get to the top, you have to be protected a little bit. So people read them for me, and I know generally if they're good or bad, but I don't want specific words sitting in
Yeah.
my head. So yeah, there's definitely because we're not good artists, if you're not vulnerable, and you probably
Yeah.
feel the same way in your work, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have that sensitivity, you're not going to be very good at what you do.
And unfortunately, the internet just allows people sitting in their underwear
Terrible.
in their basement on a Friday night
That's
to
right.
say whatever they want to say.
I know.
You talk about the fact that you love to travel and that it's not boring when you're doing so many different things.
Right.
Your career has been incredible from outsiders looking in to see everything you've done and everything you've accomplished. Is there one thing you can share with the listeners that you still want to do, maybe within singing or something else? I mean, obviously you've been a writer, you've done so many things. Is there something that you're still thinking, yeah, I got to get to that?
I would say, the biggest thing I did for sure, audience-wise, was the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. I mean, that was crazy, I have to say. So there's nothing I want to do career-wise. I mean, there's a lot I can do and a lot I have planned. I'm going to concertize, hopefully, for a very long time and record and stay busy and also continue to explore other genre because, I grew up in Rochester. My parents were high school vocal music teachers, and I was exposed to every possible kind of music. And so when I started singing classically and people were sort of pushing me into this niche of the Italian opera singer, I said, no, I want to explore all the culture that I love and know. So I'll continue to do that. But the thing that I would love to be able to do is make a difference. That's the one thing I would love to be able to do is make a difference for the arts, for children who are interested in the arts, for the audience to sort of be able to explore, and really people to have this exposure to what it means to be human through art. So that's the thing I'm really focused on now.
That's a beautiful thing to focus on. There are so many people for whom classical music is not reachable for them.
Yeah.
And that's just so sad because it's such a
I know.
beautiful
Well,
experience.
and not even classical. We have Chicago Voices this season. February 4th is a gala that is celebrating all kinds of vocal music in Chicago, from blues to gospel to rock, you name it. And, in a way, it's also saying, hey, we belong to the spectrum of what's done in the
Yeah.
U.S. How did we get excluded from this? Because we're singers too. And there's that. And I'm also doing vocal programming at the Kennedy Center. So if you know of any great singers up here, let me know.
Perfect. We will do that. Thank you so much for taking
Thank
the
you.
time.